to Talking Junk. Talking Junk. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Welcome to Talking Junk, the podcast that usually comes to you live every week. This time, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus, recovering from a stupid injury sustained about a month ago. But that is irrelevant. We had something happen that rocked our world. Now, I'm going to say this because you know that on the other podcast, The Break Room, there's a macho on there. Like, he comes on and he's a co-host, and you know we have fun every week. This is not that macho. It's a different macho. If you know Spanish people, you know that that name is common. It's a common nickname. All right. So we're gonna say first of all to give your condolences to the family of Ishmael Macho Fernandez, and we are asking that you guys please go to the GoFundMe page and donate as much as you can. Every dollar counts. It's going to help the family get what they need when they need it. So please go to GoFundMe, go to my Facebook page, or go to my Instagram. It's on there. Please click that link and donate as much as you can. Now, without further ado, I'm going to get back into the regular us, the regular Talking Junk. And our first great guest tonight is here to talk about many things, including strange clients, which is probably going to be right up our alley. So without further ado, Mickie Kennedy. How you doing tonight, Mickie?
Good. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you came on. It's been a long road, like you've heard. We've been on kind of a hiatus, so I'm glad that you were scheduled out far enough that I didn't have to reschedule.
Sure.
So how you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Good. And where you calling us in from today?
Baltimore County, Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland. All right. Were you always a Baltimore native?
No, I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. Moved up to DC area for graduate school and then landed in the Baltimore area after graduate school.
By design or just sort of landed there?
Just sort of landed there. I liked the hustle and bustle of DC, but I didn't like the traffic. So someone had suggested that Baltimore was a nice compromise. So that's okay. Kind of how I ended up there.
Well, were they right? Is it kind of a good compromise?
I think it is. Every place has its pros and cons, but I definitely feel like the traffic is a lot better in the Baltimore area. And also I think that there's a lot of great amenities in the Baltimore area, despite some of the reputations we have. I mean, there are parts of Baltimore that I feel completely safe in, and there's other parts that I steer clear of. And I think it's a lot like that in a lot of cities, so it doesn't bother me.
Right, I think every kind of state has that one major city that's like that. Trust me, I'm a Bronx boy. I grew up in New York, so I know what you mean. Now you're here tonight to talk about the public relations distribution, right?
Right. I run e-releases, which is a press release distribution website, and I've been doing that for about 25 years. And to talk a little bit about press releases and PR and the opportunities that are there.
Now, was this your first choice as a career, or did you just kind of land in that also?
So, well, I guess around 27 years ago, I finished a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. With an emphasis in poetry. And so my game plan was to write poetry and wait tables. And so I did that for a summer after graduating. And I realized that I do not have a body that handles 10 hours a day on concrete. My knees hurt.
I mean, who really has a body for that?
There are
Nobody
women
has a
who've done
body
it
for
for
that.
decades, and they're just stellar. But I could not get used to it. I hated it. I felt so psychologically damaged at the end of a shift that I wasn't reading or writing. So I was like, I need one of them safe office jobs. And so I got hired at a telecom research startup in DC as employee number 3. And one of the things they tasked me with, because I had writing in my background, was to write press releases and send them out to the media. We were using faxes at the time. And so I did that. Didn't really know what I was doing in the beginning, but we were publishing telecom traffic data. We were the only source for it. Basically, the owner of the business was a telecom attorney, and he worked with the ITU for many years, who collected the data. They just said, this is becoming too big of a project for us, and we're just wanting to like pass the baton. So he took over it as a private company, but with the blessing of the ITU. So we were like the sole source of this data. So it's really valuable data, but how do you turn that into stories? And so I realized that you could talk a little about the data that you're releasing, but find the stories underneath it. And we had done a release about the telecom traffic to and from the United States from several different little Caribbean countries, and we got no response. And I noticed that one of the countries had more traffic than all the others. And when I looked into it, I realized that it was like the 1-900 center for the United States. Like everybody was offshoring these call centers for 1-900 numbers, horoscopes, dating advice, psychics, everything. 50 cents.
Call them in now for a
reading.
reading.
Exactly. And so I wrote about that and sent that release out, and it got picked up in the Financial Times, The Economist, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and 3 telecom trade publications. And I was like, ooh, that was a big success after really failing. And I just realized that the data that was in this press release was in the previous press release that got no response, but what was missing was that story telling people about the growth of the 1-900 number industry, and that people didn't realize that most of the people that they talked to were either in this country or rerouted through that country. And it was just interesting, and people really loved the story. And I continued to write releases talking about the interesting little stories behind the data, and we just got pickup after pickup. And I just said to myself, wow, this could really be transformative for a small business. And around the same time, I do a faxing, and I get these phone calls saying, hey, next time, instead of faxing, could you email it to us? And I was like, oh, email's so much easier. And so that sort of gave me the idea for e-releases. I spent about a year just networking with journalists, mostly in bulletin boards, if people recall what that was, and getting their agreement to accept press releases from me. And so I launched in October of 1998, just being a matchmaker, sending pitches and press releases to these journalists and helping my clients get media pickup. And I think a little over 15 years ago, PR Newswire, which is the oldest and largest newswire press releases, approached me and said, hey, you should consider adding a distribution from us. And I was just like, I don't know. My clients were paying like $300, and they charged $1,600 to move a press release nationally. At first, they were trying
that had to be lucrative for you, though.
For
the switch.
Well, I mean, it is, but it's expensive. I mean, the Newswire charges $1,600. They didn't want to discount it to me. They were like, maybe we could give it to you for $600, and then I'd have to mark it up and sell it to my clients. I'm just like, my clients are paying $300 now. I don't think that they can afford to pay. It would have to be like $800, $900, and so we just didn't think we were going to work out nationally. They were thinking maybe do a city or state distribution, and I was really against that because most of our clients were looking for national pickup. And so eventually I met them. I saw they had an editorial team overnight that didn't do anything. They said, they might get a story that's breaking news, a recall, an accident, or they wanted to get something to the Asian markets. And this bureau would have to coordinate with the Asian bureau. But at the end of the day, they said they just sit idle for many hours. And I was like, hey, instead of me sending my releases immediately, which I had been doing, why don't we set them up to be scheduled for the next business day? And then your people can set them up on the wire overnight, and it wouldn't cost you additional labor. And so then when I suggested that, they finally agreed to give me a national distribution at a much reduced rate. So the average person that comes and uses us gets a distribution that if they went directly to the wire would probably cost 2.5 to 3 times what they would be paying us.
Now, if I come into your establishment and I'm looking for your services, what particular services am I looking for?
Well, we offer 3 levels, and they're based largely on word count and industry count. So, like if you come in and you've got a very short release and you're just looking for one industry, then our entry level buzz builder would be appropriate.
Now,
But
when you're talking about release, it could be anything along the lines of maybe a music single, maybe an indie film movie, something that I'm working on, maybe one of my documentaries or something. Is that something along the lines of what you mean?
certainly, I mean, there's so many different reasons to release. Could be a product, a service, a film, a book, a speaking engagement, anything, a new service, a pivot. I mean, we did a lot of business during the pandemic, people just communicating to their market what they were doing during the pandemic and how they were pivoting and what services they had and how they were working with people. So any of those things can really be a potential press release that you would send out over the wire.
Okay. So now if I'm a small mom and pop restaurant and I'm really working on nickel and dimes at this point, how would I be able to benefit from your establishment?
I mean, absolutely. I think that at the end of the day, press releases are really effective for most anybody that wants to share their message and story with others. I think the people for whom PR is not a good fit are those that are in markets where the newswire just really doesn't want you. And
So I feel like I'm getting this all wrong, Mickie. Now, it's not just advertisement. It's really pitching yourself, right?
Correct. Yeah. You're not paying for coverage on any websites. If you pay and send a release, you're not going to have your press release in Forbes magazine. It's not paid placement. It's an opportunity where this release goes on the wire. It's available for journalists to review it, and they decide whether they're going to write an article about it. We're looking for journalists to organically write an article about you. Putting the press release on a website is called syndication, and a little bit of that happens when you go over a wire. And there's now a whole cottage industry of probably like 40 companies online that have wire in their name. In the United States, there's only 2 wires that reach journalists. That's PR Newswire, who we work with, the oldest and largest, and the other one's Business Wire. There's a third wire that tried to start and they pivoted. That's Globe Newswire. And basically, they just work with publicly traded companies that are looking to meet SEC disclosures, but they really don't care that they're not reaching journalists. And in fact, some smaller publicly traded companies would prefer that journalists not look too closely at their announcements. So, the release shows up on Yahoo and other places like that. Everybody
so
else,
really what you're saying is that you're really, like, in layman's terms, you're the dating app for these magazines who are potentially looking for, or matter of fact, I don't even know why I'm trying to go with this obscure we met on Podmatch. What you do is like Podmatch. You put all these people's things into this little wire, the database, and these magazine journalists look through them to see if those topics can fit what they're writing about or what they want to write about in said magazine.
Correct.
Okay. Now I got it. Because for a second there, I just thought it was more advertising.
No, it's basically journalists who have access to the wire, which is available for free to them, go and they log in and they get a customized feed. Could be the industry headline, but they can customize it. So if I cover, say, fashion, but I don't write about anything that is like retail, like if it mentions JCPenney or Target, I'm not interested. So I can actually put keywords to exclude, so that I'm looking at a feed of headlines that is really relevant to me. And what's made that really useful is that the inbox of journalists are a disaster. And that used to be a really preferred way to reach journalists. It was the way I started e-releases, and now it's a landmine. What happened over the past 25 years is media databases became available, and they vary in price, usually between $5,000 and around $20,000 a year. And if I'm a golf club company and I just bought access to this database and say $10,000, I log in and I look at everybody that's interested in golf, and I find that's 2,800 journalists. Well, there's like 500,000 journalists in this database. They start talking themselves into say, hey, don't people in the banking industry buy golf clubs? Yeah. So let's start sending this to banking and financial analysts. Even though they would never write an article about golf clubs, you've just spammed them with off-targeted releases. And so the average journalist is just inundated with hundreds and hundreds of emails daily that are off-target. And people talk themselves into sending them, and it's the wild, wild west out there. But what isn't is the wire. The wire is very pure. It's a very customized feed. It's very rarely off target, because the newswire won't let you, take advantage of it and put like, oh, I want to go to all 30 of these categories. You might want to, but they weren't going to let you. And so they're going to pick that it's very relevant. So the wire is like now become.
So it's sort of like hashtagging on social media.
I mean, it can be, but I feel like hashtags is sort of abused in a way. With the wire, there's integrity, and you can put the categories that you want, but the newswire is going to overrule you and say, this is the 2 categories you should get. And so you are overruled. There is editorial discretion at the wire. So that's one of the things that happens. But it's very clean. Very few journalists ever complain that their news feed is really off target. It rarely ever is. And for that reason, it's the place that journalists go to first for a story. They will go to Business Wire and they will go to Pure Newswire. They generally go to both. So you would never want to pay to go to both of those places. That would be like a very amateurish move. It isn't something you'd want to do. But you do want to be there. And PR firms used to rely on email pitches. They still do it, but what they have to do now, which they've done a little bit in the past, but now you have to do it, is you have to call them and say, hey, buried in your email is a pitch we sent you. Could I get you to, can I talk you over the phone how to find it in your email? And that's a terrible situation to be in.
Sure is.
Anytime
you want to go into spam to find something important is not the way you want to go.
No. So it is a very difficult situation. And I think that there was a while where people believed that the news wires were going to be irrelevant. And the exact opposite has happened. They are more relevant today than they've ever been. I follow a guy on TikTok called Snackalator, and each week he does a roundup of new products hitting grocery store shelves, usually snacks. And he's like, hey, I can't tell from this picture whether this is a glaze or an icing, but these are the images that the company provided in their press release that I pulled off the wire. So he's pulling stuff off the wire. There are Instagram influencers that are heavy in fashion, and they get breaking stories from the wire, and they pitch it on Instagram and share it on Instagram, including amazing videos and images before anybody else has access to it. So it's you know, the newswire is become way more relevant than it ever has. And
so we're gonna have to chat off camera because I'm gonna need to get my hands on some of this stuff myself.
Sure.
Now, I would imagine that you have seen in your day some pretty obscure things in this field. What are some of the stories that you could tell us without kind of embarrassing the people? Well, who am I kidding? Well, we want you to embarrass these people.
Right. I've been doing this for 25 years, so some of these people I'm sure have completely shifted. I know that they're no longer in the same businesses, but we had one client who had a press release that had a quote by Tom Cruise. And this was a while ago, because today, if you send us a press release with a quote by Tom Cruise, the next thing I'm going to ask is, hey, can I get your celebrity endorsement document? And they're going to be like, what? You know, the contract that you have with Tom Cruise. And they're like, I don't have one. I was like, well, we're going to need that, or a letter from Tom Cruise and his attorney allowing you to include that. But, you know, 20 years ago,
I bet Trump wish he had that.
Right. So 20 years ago, I got a press release, and this was before they had figured out this is what we're going to do for this. But a guy had a quote from Tom Cruise, and he had a quote from someone else that I can't recall. But I sent it to the Wire for them to review it, because I was like, this is a little different. And they looked at it and said, huh. And they said, can you figure out his relationship with Tom Cruise and what's going on here? Because, you know, it's a very obscure little product, and it's strange that Tom Cruise would have this quote about the product. So I went back to him and I said, hey, could you tell me a little bit more about this? And he goes, what I did was I looked in the phone book and found a Tom Cruise in Ohio. And I said, hey, can I make up a quote and attribute it to you and pay you $250, and everybody will think it's the Tom Cruise, the celebrity. So, you know,
that is the smartest fucking thing I've ever heard.
So needless to say, the Newswire wouldn't send it out. And I think it was a couple of years later that they'd figured out, going forward, we're going to need a document from an attorney or a celebrity endorsement contract of some sort before we allow you to plug celebrities into your press releases. Another thing that we had was during Katrina, the flooding and everything that happened there, we had a sex shop send a release saying that one of their customers' life was saved because he floated out from Katrina on a
sex doll.
A sex doll. And that the Newswire did accept, though we all knew it wasn't true. We all felt like this probably didn't really happen.
Hey,
but
if it did really happen, it was one of those old school inflatable ones, because those big ass heavy ones, there's no way you're floating on one of those.
No. So that's another fun one. I had a client who invented a soap product that you would release into a small or forming hurricane, and it would prevent the hurricane from completely forming. And surprisingly, he got all of these requests to be interviewed because it was hurricane season, and he didn't respond to anybody. I had USA Today come back to me and say, hey, we've left messages for this guy. Where is he? Well, it turns out he was on a helicopter in Texas, and he was seeding storms. They seeded about 5 tropical storms around the Gulf during that time, and he wasn't able to return these people's calls. And at the end of the season, he came back, he called me and said, hey, I got all these calls from people, and my assistant deleted them. Could you just let me know who I need to call? And I'm like, dude, it's like November. That was like earlier this year, September, August, heading into hurricane season. I don't think anyone's interested at this point. I said, you really need to follow up when the iron is hot. But anyhow,
right.
he said, I don't know if it's worth it, because at this point we finished this test with the government. And he said, the consensus is they couldn't tell that it made any difference. So it's kind of a failure. But I thought that was interesting. And he had just spent the last 2 or 3 months in a helicopter going and dumping this product all over these storms, trying to prevent them from turning into full-blown hurricanes. I also had a client that was on The Tonight Show and I think Good Morning America, Celebriducks. This was like over 15 years ago. It was a little duck that was fashioned into mostly historical figures, but they do some modern celebrities. Again, they had to pay a licensing fee. But it's been ripped off, unfortunately. Every time I go into a gift shop and I see these cute little ducks that are like, wearing horns like devils or something weird, like they look like Shakespeare, I always pick them up and look underneath. And I'd say 90% of the time they're not my client, but it was a fun product. And he was also on Conan O'Brien. As well as The Tonight Show. And so, again, it's a very obscure product, but at the time it was extremely unique. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have a very unique product, you're ripe for PR, and you can get on The Tonight Show. You can get a lot of pickup from people as a result of that. So it's just a matter of putting yourself out there. We did a press release, several press releases for a company called Alerca. And they were selling, you put a deposit down for a hypoallergenic cat that had been genetically designed to be more hypoallergenic, whatever it's called, than your average house cat. And
hypoallergenic. Now, my brother has a Bengal that he swears is hypoallergenic. Meanwhile, I'm allergic to cats and almost died like 4 times.
Right. Wow. So
now,
in their case,
what you do though seems like it could be a great reality show. Great fucking reality show.
It could be, but the problem is I've done this for 25 years and I only have about 20 or 30 of these really wacky clients. So I average maybe one really interesting client a year, I think. But despite that, we have had some really amazing people come through. And some really fun people that have come through. We've had some people.
Now you did mention that you service the average Joe,
right?
How would one actually take advantage and try to reach out to get your services?
So our website's ereleases.com. We have a new customer special in our footer of our website. All of our social media is there. Feel free to chat or email or call. We're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we have no salespeople. It's just editors, and they all are empowered to be completely honest with you and let you know if we feel like we're not a good fit. I had a carpet company from New Jersey approach me and said, "Hey, we have a budget for a release a month for a whole year." And I'm just like, I tried to steer them away, but they came back and said, "Look, the boss has given us this budget. We either spend it with you or someone else." So I was like, well, come on in. And
right, you can't say no to that at that
right.
point.
But we did 4 or 5 months and nothing happened. And I did a brainstorm with them, trying to come up with better ideas. And I went through an exercise, and one of the questions I asked was, "Who's your biggest enemy?" And I thought it'd be like, Russell with the Rug Emporium across the street, but he said it was the big box home improvement stores. And I really liked that answer, and he provided all the evidence for it. And so we did a David versus Goliath press release calling out the big box home improvement stores and how bad they are for the carpet industry and what an inferior product consumers get. They call a list of people who have a home improvement license in the state, and they will pick up the phone and call someone on a list and say, "Hey, we have 2,400 square feet of carpet for you to install. Are you available tomorrow at 11 a.m.? And they just called a roofer, and he doesn't have work tomorrow. So he's going to say, "Sure, I'm available. I'll try to figure out something looking on YouTube tonight." And it's no surprise that one of the biggest reasons that people who get carpets from big box home improvement stores later get it replaced within 7 to 9 years is because it was never properly stretched. The seams were never matched properly, and the padding
wasn't done by a professional.
Right. And the padding is usually not very good, and it's worn out or wasn't appropriate for that carpet. And so when we sent that out, it got picked up in over a dozen floor trade publications. They loved it.
Wow.
It was something that was missing from the industry. They weren't talking about it, and yet they were. That's the biggest customer of every customer of these floor trade publications are other local carpet companies. We continue to do sort of variations of that release, talking about different elements and aspects of competing against the big box home improvement stores. And at the end of a year, we had gotten one local newspaper pickup. We got picked up in New Jersey Magazine, where they were located. Great consumer magazine. But all the other clips, there was over, I think, close to 30 clips, and about 27 or 28 of them were all floor trade publications, which none of their customers read, but they put them all together in a brag book, they called it. And every time they went and gave a quote to someone, they'd say, hey, we may not come in the cheapest, but we've been doing this for X amount of years. You will never have to move all the furniture out of a room for us to come back in and restretch it because it wasn't done properly. But if you go with someone else, that happens way more than you think it does. And in addition, here we are in Floor Trade Weekly. Here we are in Floor Coverings Today. And here we are in the local newspaper, New Jersey Magazine. And just by adding that 1 minute of walkthrough, I mean, the person doesn't even read the article. They just see that credibility of them being in these publications. They started converting 17% more of these conversations, which is like almost 1 out of every 5 customers they were previously losing, they were now converting.
Yeah, that's all it takes is that credibility. Well, right now, Mickie, let me give you the floor so you can tell these people why they need you in their industry. And it's not a stretch to think how you can help them get to that place.
Right. So my website is ereleases.com. I have a free masterclass, which is a great place for people to start. It's less than an hour-long video because I think the last class I bought was 24 hours of videos, and I never finished it. So that's available at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. And again, it's completely free, but a great place to start because you will walk away with actionable strategic press releases. The harsh reality is a lot of people say press releases don't work, and 97% of all press releases do not generate earned media. But these types of strategic releases are the 3% of releases that get picked up time and time again. So if you build a campaign of 6 to 8 releases, and if it takes you a year or a year and a half to complete those releases, I guarantee that at least a third of those releases will generate earned media because you chose strategic ones. And so many people look at what their competitor does with press releases, and that's the worst way to do it because 97% of them do fail. But if you focus on the ones that succeed, you can be successful. And one of the biggest things people feel is I'm not big enough or important enough to matter to the media. Journalists don't get accolades for writing about the big companies. Their audience doesn't appreciate it because everybody knows the Googles, the Home Depots, the giant companies. But when a journalist puts the spotlight on an unknown company, a mom and pop, a new startup, they do get appreciation because the people didn't know about this company before or its products or services. So being very small is actually an advantage when it comes to getting PR. So don't feel that you're too small to matter.
Right, because look at us here mattering. Do a little bit of PR ourselves. Mickie, thank you very much for coming on and enlightening us about the wonders of press release and why we need to get on your list. You will be seeing an email with my name on it pretty soon.
Oh, excellent.
I appreciate your time. And again, I love those glasses.
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you again. I appreciate you.
Excellent.
Guys, we have one more great guest for you, but you have to listen to a word from our sponsor. We'll be right back with David Page.
Subscribe for more videos.
Don't forget to like, comment, and share.
I sat in a bar once and a man handed me a drink, and it was the most cool, refreshing, laid-back Cheshire cat cocktail that I had ever had in all of my days. It made me feel like I was on a tropical island, but also standing as tall as a CEO at the exact same time. Next thing I knew, I was smarter, I was sharper, I was cooler, I was calmer. I turned around, I asked the barman, I said, "What'd you give me?" He looked at me hard and he said, "I just gave you a dizzle."
Yeah, go to the dizzlebrand.com right now so you can dizzle somebody. Now, our next guest has been waiting several weeks. We had to reschedule because of everything that I've been going through these past couple weeks, and he is a gem. He's been on once before. Without further ado, David Page. David is the author of the creator of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, the author of Food Americana, and he is a longtime journalist, 2 decades, foreign and domestic, ABC News, NBC News. He's transitioned to food television, books, and now he's venturing into podcasting. He's here now to talk about his new podcast called Culinary Characters Unlocked. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm feeling a lot better, man. Thanks for giving me those 2 weeks of reprieve because I needed it.
Well, you can't do anything if you don't feel good, so there you go.
And yes, David, we are live, and you most certainly can fucking swear.
Fuck yes.
It wouldn't be talking junk without the cursing.
Okay, there you go.
Now, Culinary Characters Unlocked. What are you just here interviewing culinary masterminds?
I am interviewing, I hate that word. I am having extended after dinner conversations, such as you might have over espresso and cognac, or 2 cognacs, or maybe 12, with fascinating people from the world of food. That means legends like Dan Barber, Drew Nieporent, Nancy Silverton, Christopher Kimball. It also means future legends, the folks on the way up who perhaps just won their first James Beard Award, something like that. The chefs you may not know if you're not from their city or town, who really are doing something special. And I'm going out of my way to talk to people you may never hear of elsewhere. I'm talking about the really great independent restaurateurs, the mom and pops who run everything from a hamburger stand to fine dining, the folks who are the backbone of great cuisine throughout the country.
The heart and soul of the food.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's a tough time to be an independent restaurateur. Our margins are low, bankruptcies are up, COVID didn't
Thanks
help.
a lot, pandemic.
Yeah, so look, it kind of like when I created Diners, one of the first things I started to hear from restaurateurs was, you saved us from going bankrupt. We were real close to going under. So any help I can give along the way to anyone who's out there making good, honest food, I want to do. But this is more than just talking about the food. It's about these fascinating people. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the folks who really, really care about feeding you well, these are folks who are passionate about what they do, and they want to make people happy, and their life stories are fascinating. I mean, Nancy Silverton, one of the most legendary chefs in American history. She's got a Michelin star. She has won the James Beard Award as, talk about a trifecta, best chef in America, best pastry chef in America, and owner of the best restaurant in America. And wow. I said to Nancy, I said, "So I assume you were cooking at your mother's knee?" And she said, "No, I had no interest in food till I was in college. And the most beautiful man I had ever seen in my life turned out to be a cook in the cafeteria in the dormitory. So wanting to start a relationship with him, I asked him for a job cooking. Now, she didn't cook. She had no experience cooking. When he hired her, she was cooking out of cookbooks, but they had a brief relationship. And more importantly for her life, she looked around one day and said, I could do this for a living. So she did.
The Michelin star love story.
Absolutely. Well, but you understand, you look at Julia Child and the stories of her and her husband back in Europe when they were in the OSS, or Ruth Reichel's writings about her various love affairs over the years. Chefs are passionate people, and that passion extends beyond the niche of cooking to how they experience life and what they do, and in many cases, the risks they're willing to take to make it all happen. These are fascinating people.
Yeah, to say the least. And you've spent majority of your tenure in the food industry.
Well,
I
made an interesting turn to the food industry. I've been doing it now for more than 20 years, I guess. But, I was a straight ahead journalist for the longest time. I was a network news producer. I was a show producer. I got into food television by accident. I left network news because I saw it starting to change and the standards start to diminish. And this is not a political argument. I don't think there's, quote, fake news on the major networks. But the news business I had grown up with was starting to weaken. So I got out.
Yeah, I get it.
And I ended up opening a production company and starving. I wasn't selling any shows to anybody. But Al Roker and I were friends. He had been on the Weekend Today show when a partner and I created it and ran it. This was before he was on the main show. And Al, way back when, had opened his own production company, which he still has today quite successfully. And I called him up and said, hey, I'm running a production company, but that means I'm making no money. Nobody's buying anything from me. So Al said, why don't you do some stuff for me? I'm doing a lot of stuff for the Food Network. So I started in food television that way. And then it developed, I wasn't going to get rich working for them through Al. So we both understood that at some point I needed to pitch them directly. And that resulted in diners, drive-ins, and dives. And now I'm a food journalist.
Right. And now with this new show, you're tired of having other people host for you. So David Page got to go hosting himself.
No, that's not it. No. But I did start in radio. And in many respects, it's always been my favorite medium.
I mean, you have the voice for it.
Oh, thank you. Podcast is radio 2.0. It's radio for an instant gratification society. I want it when I want it. But it offers you some opportunities here that are not available in other media. First of all, painting detailed pictures without having the pictures, which is, I hate documentaries that when they delve into the past, all they have is, quote, stock footage or file footage. On the radio, there's no such thing as stock footage. It's whatever picture you can paint. Secondly, I wanted to do something where the point of the exercise was the extended conversation. Interviewing someone for nightly news means there's a very specific subject of this story, and that's what we're going to talk about. Interviewing someone for diners. Yes, we can include a little of your backstory, but mostly this is going to be a chronicle of our visit and you talking about what we're doing while we're here. The opportunity to have a kind of barrier-free conversation with a creative, interesting person that can go wherever it goes is an opportunity that I didn't want to miss. I mean, I really do see this as after dinner talk, not necessarily here, but in Europe, where I lived for many years and where you're more likely to not be rushed out of a restaurant after dinner. You're more likely to be welcome to sit at that table and drink that espresso. Did I say espresso with an X? That espresso. Whoa, that was bad. That espresso and your 12 cognacs and just shoot the shit. See, I swore. And that's what I have been enjoying with so many terrific people. I mean, Drew Nieporn, referred to by the New York Times a while back as the last great American restaurateur standing. If you don't know the name, you know his restaurants and his partner in them. He's opened 35 or 40 restaurants over the years, but his two best known are Nobu and the Tribeca Grill, in which he is partnered with some guy who's trying to make it as an actor. What's his name? Robert De Niro? Oh, yeah. And Drew tells a phenomenal story. You know, he says, De Niro takes me down the street and we're looking at it. It's great. And then he talks about
I
signing
thought she was
a
going
whole-
to try to sell me a newspaper for a second.
I was, yeah. Somehow I fell into a 1930s mid-Atlantic phony accent. And then the Zeppelin, yeah. But he
It's
tells
all
phenomenal-
good. See, I'm here for
It's
you.
all good. It's
see?
all good. And he's just a fascinating character. And after 50 or 60 years in the food biz, he feels no real need to curb his tongue when he has an opinion.
Why would
he's
he?
Just no reason. He's just great to talk to. Or you know who Dan Barber is?
I've heard the name.
He may be the most cutting edge chef in America today. He owns 2 Michelin-starred restaurants, Blue Hill at Stone Farms and Family Meal at Blue Hill. Stone Farms is perhaps better known because it's really the mothership on a 60-acre farm, which once belonged to his grandmother. So he grew up there. And he is at the forefront of developing new seeds for new breeds of produce that are intended to taste good. His whole mantra is local because it tastes better. He wants to take control of seed out of the hands of 4 chemical companies that now pretty much control it. And he wants to create, endemic to the land where he is, foods that taste good and are good for you. He's been working with one breeder to create a kind of lettuce that has the nutrient value of spinach, because the number 1 and 2 leafy greens eaten in American salads are iceberg and romaine, and they have virtually no nutritional benefit whatsoever.
So not only is he trying to make these things taste better, he's basically making the chemical compound better for your body. More nutrients,
yes,
more
that's
vitamins.
and on top of that, he's not anti-beef. He wants beef raised correctly, but he's not as worried about cow farts as many environmentalists are. He thinks it's manageable. He wants us to eat like our grandparents did, which was mostly vegetables with a small amount of animal flesh. And he wants us to eat what grows where we are. Shipping things across the country, genetically modifying them or growing them for attributes that are not flavor is widespread, and he is deeply opposed to it. I mean, look, tomatoes have been bred to be perfectly round so you can ship them in those plastic containers. They have not, for the most part, been bred to taste good. I mean, I live in New Jersey, where we're lucky that a Jersey tomato grown locally is still the pinnacle of that fruit. And it's a fruit, not a vegetable. The pinnacle of that fruit here in America. There are, they won't, well, they won't fit in that plastic container, but damn, they taste good. And that's his position on how we should eat everything.
David, we're closer now. We have to do dinner.
Oh, absolutely. Where are you again?
Right now, I am in Connecticut. I was in Florida the first time we had this interview.
Oh, you're not that far away, buddy.
Yeah, I'm not far at all.
Come
I'll
on
jump in
down.
the car and I'll be there in a couple hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll cook you dinner or I'll take you to dinner. Either one.
That sounds good to me.
I'd recommend letting me cook local scallops personally, but hey, that's just me.
Hey, if we do that, then I have to have the wife cook you some Spanish food as well.
Well, I'm sorry, Spanish food?
Oh yeah, we're Puerto Rican.
Ooh, mofongo for everybody.
arroz con candules, whatever you want.
Now, and I don't know enough about Puerto Rican food. I know Spanish food pretty well. I've spent a lot of time in Spain. How different and similar? I mean, obviously, Puerto Rican, I guess, evolved somewhat from Spanish, although there would have been other colonial influences.
So
How
I see a
close
lot
is
of
it to
rice.
Spanish food?
I would say it differs. It has its own spins on it, kind of like what you were saying with the gentleman that wants to breed
Right.
the food
Dan
for
Barber.
your local
Right.
economy, right? So
Yeah.
Puerto Ricans, they'll take what they found. I can guess on the island because I'm a New York Rican. So what I found on my island was pizza, but
And
what they
the
found
best-
on their
The best breakfast sandwiches in the world, dude.
oh yes, bacon, egg, and cheese,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Now, I see a lot of Hispanic rice. They do differ, but one thing is for sure that we all cook our rice, our colored rice, with a
Mhm.
type of bean. The Puerto
Mhm.
Ricans used the green pigeon pea.
Mhm.
A lot of Spanish people use either red kidney beans or black beans inside their rice. That could be the only thing that I can see because I'm not very cultured, which is
Well, what's
fucked up,
fascinating
but-
about what you just said, though, in terms of eating local and making it good for you, is that to the average American, the concept of putting beans and rice together is confusing because we don't, for the most part, as a food culture, we don't mix starches. But when you mix beans into another starch, beans become the source of protein.
right.
And you don't need animal flesh in that diet. And you see so many cultures that have some kind of beans and rice combination. But then you also have cultures. There was, and I'm going to screw up the details here, but original Native American cuisine, especially south of what is now the border, Native Americans would grow beans, squash, and one other vegetable in proximity to each other because it turns out that they enrich the soil for each other and
Wow.
keep the nutrients from being depleted in a certain way. And I should be
Yeah,
better
kind
on
of a
the
symbiotic
specifics than I am.
relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, that's 4 syllables. I don't do words more than 3. So, if you're going to get into
All right,
symbiotic,
that was a bonus for them.
wow.
It's my first day back. I got to throw the big words out.
I'm very impressed. I am very impressed.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
It's short-circuited half of my brain, but we'll see if
That's
we can
all
get
right.
on with this interview.
That's okay. I got to get. I haven't booked a Puerto Rican chef yet. I need to do that. That's a fascinating.
When you do that,
yeah,
let me know.
I will.
Now,
I promise.
I'm a sorry sucker of a Puerto Rican because I can't eat cilantro.
Oh, you're one of those who thinks it tastes like soap?
No, it doesn't taste like soap to me. I don't know what those dickheads are talking about. It's just really strong. Like I can taste the shit and everything, and I just don't like the taste.
I love it. I'll put it on anything. It adds a sense of brightness and freshness. I mean,
I'm a parsley guy.
parsley.
parsley guy.
It's the bland. I'm not New York Puerto Rican, so I guess I can't say this, but what kind of New Yorker are you?
Not a good one, because
Jesus.
any New York Rican will tell you they need their cilantro inside their sofrito. Now, sofrito, do you know what that is?
It's a sauce. It's red or green or both.
Right. It could be either or, but it all depends on what type of peppers you use. It's really a vegetable smoothie that we use to season our food.
Well, I actually buy it. I buy it jarred. Which
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to tell you because I suppose I could make it. I'll look.
You could.
A recipe. Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna have my wife make you some. and we'll take it
Please!
to
I'll give you my
whenever we
address.
go.
Send it, please. Send
We
it.
definitely will. Now, she substitutes the cilantro for parsley, and this sofrito we can use in salad.
See,
dressings,
you've upset
we
me
can
so
use
much.
in
I gotta-
everything.
Yeah. Okay.
I can guarantee you it tastes better than any store-bought one that you've had.
Look, making stuff. My whole essence of what I'm telling people lately is Would you just fucking cook? I mean,
Right.
people, cooking is not an onerous chore. And by the way, there are nights you don't want to cook. That's why there's Chinese order out or pizza. But I see them selling these food prep kits where you open a box and there's a plastic thing with one teaspoon of pepper. Jesus H Christ, man. Or there are little pieces of chicken breast to throw in.
Like Milder's always told me, you sprinkle till your heart tells you to stop.
Yeah, but it's a concept. Look, you want to cook quickly? I can give you a list of foods with a 15-minute prep time or less that'll blow your mind. Roast
But David,
chicken.
there's so much stuff now that you can use to prepare your meals faster anyway.
Or
We
just
just
look,
used a mechanical
I cut
pressure
you off.
cooker. No, you're good. We just used a pressure cooker today because we came home late from work.
Yeah, no,
It-
but
it had 20 minutes, chicken's done.
to me, well, first of all, you should have chicken stock. And I'm not afraid to use boxed stock. That's fine. But whenever we have a chicken, the carcass becomes, well, it depends how much meat's on the carcass. If there's enough, it becomes part of chicken soup. And if there's not enough, it becomes broth. But let's take a roast chicken, for example. And I cook it differently than many people. Most folks will tell you to cook it in the 300s somewhere. I cook it at 500. And here's how long it takes. You get yourself a big metal pan. You put the chicken in it. You rub some salt and pepper on it, and then some garlic. Personally, I use the stuff that so-called foodies will tell you shouldn't go near. I use the minced garlic in a jar because
Garlic.
all of that, I don't use it for anything that's garlic as the central ingredient, but I'm using this mostly so I can get the liquid from that jar all over the bird.
Makes sense.
I put it in the pan. I pour in some stock. I put it in the oven for 30 minutes. I have dinner. I open it up before dinner. If the skin hasn't crisped, I put the broiler on for a couple of minutes. But that's it. That's all it takes. It takes longer to use one of those goddamn meal kits or short ribs. You buy some short ribs. You put some oil in a pot. You throw in some vegetables. You let it start to do what it does. You throw in the short ribs. You throw in some crushed tomatoes out of a can, some wine if you want. You turn the heat down as low as it can go. You pour in a little stock because you want water above the meat. And then you check every 30 minutes. And if you're a little low on liquid, you add some more. But you leave it there for a minimum of 4 hours.
Set it
And
and
then you
forget
come
it.
back and it's dinner. That's less work than a goddamn meal kit.
Right.
So
I get it.
yeah,
I get it. So these interviews you're going to be doing with these guys, you're going to do it on location, or you're going to do it kind of like we're doing it now?
no, it's all remote. It's all remote. This way I
all
get
remote.
access to everybody everywhere. I'm speaking to people all over the country. And I will be speaking to some folks internationally as well. But this is the way to go. You know, it's
Yeah.
now that you can see whoever you're talking, you know, in the old days of radio, it was a telephone interview, but and the podcast will be available both in video and audio versions. You know, the video is going up on YouTube, and the audio version will be on every podcast platform you can possibly find. So
Now, do you foresee yourself turning this into a show?
a TV show?
Yeah.
I think this is the new TV.
You're
I
absolutely
think
right.
YouTube is the most widely watched streamer of all of them, far more viewers than Netflix. So, you know, it's all media on demand. Call it what you want. You know, I like the freedom not to get network notes. Although, as I used to tell producers who worked for me when I went over their work, hey, even Hemingway had an editor, so calm down. But today, for example, I finished up the first episode, which will drop today's too. Will drop a week from today. And my final quality check was my wife coming in, who was NBC's chief content lawyer for years and has reviewed thousands of scripts and pieces. And
Very
she looked
powerful
at it.
household.
Yeah. And first thing she said was, the music's too loud at the beginning and the end. I said, okay, as is my beagle right now. Hey, Fred, cool out. So you have to have someone take a look at your work. You can't just go blundering off into the wilderness. But there is a sense of freedom in being able to be the one who decides, okay, this is it. I'm posting it now. And look, nobody who's creative has ever done. The best editor I ever worked with, a guy named Alvaro Trenchi, we worked together in Europe for years, used to say to me, David, you're never done editing. You just run out of time.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I say we a lot, but really it's just me.
That's
The
cool.
whole Talking Junk Network, is just me. And with kids, a wife, a 9 to 5, I decided I am not doing these things recorded anymore. It takes way too
Throw them
long
up
to
and
edit.
go for it.
Right.
Now,
We go
this
fucking
will
live,
still
and if we make a
replay this,
mistake,
right?
yeah, this will go live right now on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And it's because I made a boo-boo and I didn't put us on TikTok today, because we were supposed to start streaming on TikTok before I took the hiatus. Now, it'll save the recording on Facebook and on YouTube. Now, this year, I've slacked a lot, and I must admit, and my fans will at some point see me in the streets and kick me in my ass for it. But this whole year, I haven't uploaded to podcast sites at all.
Well,
I didn't have the time with everything happening.
Protect
I
your
have
ass,
to
dude.
rectify that.
Could be dangerous.
It is, but they still get the content. The content is there on YouTube, and it's not going anywhere.
I'm going to
No, that's
get
absolutely fine. Let Fred in.
Hey, Fred.
Yeah, let Fred in. We're
Fred,
dog friendly here.
come on, Fred. There you go.
Hey, yo,
Come on,
Fred.
Fred.
Welcome
treat?
here, Fred.
There you go,
How's
Fred.
Wilma?
Yes, Fred. Fred is the cutest beagle on earth. There he goes. He came in here because his mother is currently watching some rom-com, and Fred's not a big fan of rom-coms.
I hear you. No rom-coms.
Yeah.
Now, I got to admit, David, I see you at a bar,
Mm-hmm.
suited up, with your glass of whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
sitting with somebody and interviewing them. And this chef is telling you everything about his life. And he decides, you know what, David? I'm going to cook you something. And he goes into the back of the bar. He makes you something, and you guys continue your conversation. I think that right there is the best show on the Food Network.
You know what?
No, you know what? It's not even on Food Network. This show needs to be rated MA, because these chefs have gritty lives, and they need to be told in a gritty manner. So your show, I see, it's on Max.
It's on Max. Are you selling this
Max.
show for me? You're out there pitching?
I wish I could. If I had the job to do so, I would definitely do it.
Well, is it okay if I pitch it?
Yeah, why not?
Well, we'll give you a credit and a line item. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I'll even settle for me introducing your name every episode.
Oh, I like
That's
that.
all I want.
You'd be like Steve Higgins on Seth Meyers' show.
Yeah, I'll be right there.
Okay.
Here's your host, Mr. David Page.
And I have to come running through the curtain and trip on my shoes and fall over. That's a far cry from sitting in front of my computer and talking, but we'll deal with that.
It is a far cry, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. You have put so many people in front of the limelight. I think it's about time you get in front of your own.
Well, that's very kind of you. I had a news director when I was beginning my career in television, and at the time I was an on-the-air reporter, and he said to me, David, there are people God intended to be on TV, and there are people he didn't. And in your case, he didn't.
That's kind of like telling somebody they got the face for radio.
Well, I did, apparently. So there you go.
David, it's always a pleasure, and we really have to try to do one of these in person.
I'm absolutely in, dude. Come on down.
Yeah, I'll definitely travel. Let's see when our calendars can align, and I'll get right up there. Yeah, I'll drive 3 hours. I'll bring the stuff.
It's a deal. Absolutely.
Sounds good to me. But before that,
yes,
why don't you let these delinquents that listen to my show know where and when we can find the Culinary Characters Unlocked?
It debuts August 27th, a week from today, on culinaricharactersunlocked.com, but probably more easily for most folks, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be on all the major platforms. We'll be on Apple. We'll be on YouTube. So wherever you're used to going to get your podcasts, please look for us starting 1 week from today.
And can we count on it to be there every week?
It'll be there twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays.
All right.
Tuesdays and Friday. Tuesday is Nancy Silverton. And then the Friday after that is, let me look at my schedule. Nothing makes me happier than an Excel. Drew Nieport on August 30th. On the 3rd of September, Christina Wynn, who just won the James Beard Award as Best Chef in the Midwest. Then on September 6th, Dan Barber. And on it goes.
That is an incredible lineup for your first few shows. I cannot wait to see you on Max, because this is where it's going to take you. I can't wait.
Dude, you and me.
We're going to the top, David.
Well, with your help.
Going to the top. Well, I couldn't do anything without your expertise. Your genius.
Kind of you.
I need that brain. It's going to take.
We'll get together
further.
We'll drink some bourbon and we'll figure it all out. How's that?
That sounds good to me. David, thank you very much for coming on again. We're definitely going to have you rescheduled. We have to know just how good the Culinary Characters is going.
I will be glad to come back anytime. Thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. I will email you my number and we will stay in touch, my friend.
You got it.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, David. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's okay. I just said you too.
We're good. Have to be heard.
Take care.
Take care. There you guys have it, man. I tell you every week, and it's not a far stretch to think that we're going to have the greatest guests that we can get for you on this show. Mickie Kennedy's telling you exactly where you can get your press release pricing from. Go do that. Make your brand known. David Page is coming out with another show, and this time he's putting himself in the forefront. So what are we going to do? We can only do one thing: help him get that Max show, because it's going to be amazing. Amazing. And don't forget, your boy's voice may be in it. So, you got to pump that. You got to pump it. He's going to do phenomenal, though, in all seriousness. I cannot wait to see that show. It's going to be amazing. And if David is the hustler like I know he is, somebody out there is going to pitch for that to be a show. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I mean, even if I'm not involved, I cannot wait to see it. Just like you can't wait to see us again next week. We're going to have another great guest on for you. I think I only got one next week because I'm slacking. I'm still injured. I'm still working. But the break room will be back on this week. We're going to have a plethora of shit for you guys to talk about. So thank you for coming on once again. We love you. Stay locked. Like, share, and fucking subscribe. We love you. Peace out. And I almost forgot. How can I forget my pitch? If you don't like me, bitch, change the station. Lamb chops. Take them away, baby.
Thank you for tuning in to Talking Junk.